I'm at Ruthin. Behind me, the Victorian luxury Ruthin Castle Hotel. All around me, the medieval remains of Ruthin Castle. You can wander these grounds and these remains while you're staying at the castle. It's got murder, it's got executions, sieges, and a fantastic ghost, a grey lady. So come and join me as I wander these incredible grounds looking for their ghost. I've just been exploring, wandering around. I'm looking for the dungeons, which I know for a fact are under here. I've just gone up there, walked back down, and walked across here. And as I got to here, without the word of a lie, there was an echo of footsteps behind me. I'm still spooked. Every footstep I made, I could hear a footstep behind mine. Turned around to look, nothing, obviously. No footsteps, no imprints in the leaves or anything, but I really did hear something. And I don't like it, but I mean, it's broad daylight, the sun's shining, it's the end of June. You really don't expect ghostly goings on at this time of the day. But something really followed me down here, and that's not done me any good, because I'm now going down into the dungeons. And this dark hole, dating back probably to 1282. God knows how many people have been incarcerated down here. I'm going down on my own, after having something happen to me just there in the daylight. God knows what's going to happen in the dark. And of course, like so many castles, that this goes back, the original foundations laid about 1271 by King Edward I. And castles were built, of course, for fighting. Many sieges laid to this castle. In 1400, it was besieged by Owen Glendower. He laid siege to this castle, but it withheld the siege, and he burnt Ruthin to the ground. And how many people must have died around here, I don't know. In 1646 it was again laid siege to, captured by Cromwell soldiers and pulled down. This is the place where prisoners would be held. This is where people would be tortured. And it has a horrid feel about it. A cold, damp, very dark feel. There's something through here. There's an incredible archway through here leading to, I don't know where. Oh, there's a gap here. It continues, stops here, and yeah, there's a staircase leading to who knows where. Been stoned up for many years, and even up here, behind there, yeah, there's a little window, a little arrow slip pointing back through there. They tell me that there's also an area completely stoned off, where people were actually bricked up and left to die. Through here somewhere. Can't tell whether it's hollow, but there is a hole. Where that goes, I wonder if the light of the camera could point through and see how far it goes. Oh my goodness me, it goes right through. The walls are very thick. But legend has it that anyone that puts their hand in there can shake hand, not with the devil, but with the spirits that still linger in here. Dare I do it? Here goes. Oh, this is not nice. Oh God, can you imagine this if something grabs my hand now? No, it's coming out. I don't like that. No, nobody did. But what a tunnel. What a fantastic dungeon. Of course, the chances of ghosts being down here are immense, because we're surrounded by stone. And I'm a great believer that stone holds recordings of violent, tragic and premature death. Just listen to it echoing down here. And I believe that on certain times, perhaps when the atmosphere is similar to when the death took place, or perhaps it's the anniversary of that death. The recording is released from the stonework. Certain people see it again, but I don't think it's a ghost. I think it's a recording, exactly the same as pressing the replay button of your video player. You see that event again, and I believe that happens down here. But it's very dark, very dank, rather spooky down here. Nothing's happened to me, thank goodness. I can see the light out there. All spirits, good and evil, crave the light. That's where I'm going, to the light. Out into the daylight is much better. I've got to find a grave, a lady's walk, and a drowning pit. So I'm going back up to see if I can find them. I'm in search of the grave of the Grey Lady. It's not that often you can actually find the grave of a ghost. I believe I have. This has all the right ingredients: stonework, archways, and ivy everywhere. And through here, I am told, is the grave. Just a pile of stones now, where she rests. Well, she doesn't rest. That's why we're here. She still wanders. She is believed to be the wife of the second in command of the garrison here at the castle. Her husband was having an affair with a peasant woman. So his wife decided she would not be humiliated anymore. She attacked the woman with an axe. She beheaded her. The wife was brought to justice, brought back to the castle and tried, and executed for murder, and buried here in unconsecrated ground. And I believe that's why she still haunts this castle. The fact that she can't rest because of not being in consecrated ground. Now, it's broad daylight, it's sunny. Whether we can actually get a reading with this meter, I don't know. This is an EMF meter, which picks up electromagnetic fields or breaks in electromagnetic fields. And of course, energy is everywhere. You cannot destroy energy. That's why I believe ghosts still haunt. But we'll switch it on and see if she happens to be around this morning. I would say it's highly unlikely. Ghosts don't usually appear to an audience. But we'll see. Nobody knows. If we get any sounds or any change, there is a possibility that she could be here. Well, right now I don't know whether this would be a head or a feet, but we're certainly getting a reading. And I don't know. Now look, there's no electricity. There's nothing. There's no cables. There's no light switches. There's no overhead cables here. There's no reason whatsoever for me to get a reading here on this spot, other than the fact that she could be around. Who knows? I have a horrible feeling she's waiting for me. There's just been a tremendous commotion. There's peacocks all over the place. And all of a sudden, the meter, again, is picking something up here, as if there is someone actually, oh God, is actually standing here. And again, there's of course there's nothing. We're talking of a medieval castle. There's no electricity around here, but I am getting a very good reading here, as if there's something standing by this gateway. I think she's going to be with me for the rest of the morning. I don't like this. Oh God. Yeah, it's absolutely a really good reading. I mean, it's just, the camera can just pick up. I don't believe this. Now look, she's gone. She's gone. I mean, nobody will ever know. Nobody will know that because the camera, I don't think, picked up the reading here on this EMF meter. But as the camera came to me, no, she's back. And she goes. As soon as the camera comes close, there's nothing. I think we've got a camera shy ghost. And this is the area where the Grey Lady walks. Even to this day, this is still known as the Lady's Walk. I wonder why there are so many stories of Grey Ladies. I believe it's what most people see. I've seen a ghost, and funnily enough, the thing that I say about it was that it was distinctly grey. It was a grey haze. I couldn't tell whether mine was actually male or female, but it was grey, so perhaps that's why. I've still got the EMF meter with me. As I entered the Lady's Walk, it was still active, but strangely enough, the one place where you'd expect to find her, she actually doesn't seem to be here. I'm quite pleased about that, because I thought she'd attached herself to me and that she may be following us round, but she seems to have gone. This is the most incredible place, one of the best places I think I've been to. It's the Ruthin Castle Hotel now, and you've got all the ingredients here for a fantastic haunted weekend. You've got an incredible medieval castle that you can wander the grounds at night. You've got a fantastic ghost story. So what better to do after dinner, as it's getting dusk, than wandering outside and wandering these grounds alone, if you dare. Right, I'm crossing this wooden bridge into the ruins of Denby Castle. As you can imagine, you always come in and research it first. You have a look first before you actually do it. The reason I'm saying this is because I've actually seen what I believe to be a ghost here in this room. I was coming in first time and couldn't understand why there was no kiosk to pay. And I'm thinking, oh, you obviously I don't have to pay. And as I got to here, I saw there's a tent down there with a reenactor actually sitting in it. And as I got to this, close to this window, there was a figure, a dark figure, or a figure certainly in black, in this room. Now, I don't know whether it was sitting or standing. I sort of glanced and then continued, because then I realised as I got to here that I could see the kiosk where you pay, and there was a gentleman sitting by the door, apparently locked out. And I thought no more about this whatsoever. Went up to him, introduced myself, told him what I was doing, and asked if I could film here. And he said, yes, of course you can, not a problem. In fact, I'll get the key for you for the tower that we're going to see in a minute. And as we were walking back this way, I said to him, is there somebody in there in that room? A reenactor? Because that's what I thought there was. He says, oh no, I don't think there's anybody in there. I said, well, I've just seen a figure in there. So he and I went in, and he said, I don't know whether you know this, but he said, this is the start of where the dungeons were. And if you just come with me, I'll take you in, and we may as well have a look. Because I rather sheepishly wandered in here, and of course there isn't anyone here. He said, no, there was no one here. And it was here. It was in this spot where I'm standing now. And basically he said, you're not the first person to say that. People have actually sensed something in here. And all I can say is that I believe that I have seen a ghost. Now, this is the first ghost that I've actually seen while I've been doing the National Ghost Tour of Great Britain, and it happens to be in North Wales. I'm amazed, absolutely amazed. But we haven't actually come for that, we've come for a tower. the Goblin Tower, which is haunted. So I'll wander outside again, and we'll go down, and hopefully we've got the key to unlock the tower, and they're going to let us in. That very tower down there. Now, we've found the Goblin Tower, this is it. But how wrong I was. I actually pointed to the wrong tower, which of course was a chapel. Now, Trevor, you are custodian?
Yes.
This is your castle?
It is my castle.
You...
It's actually, the castle belongs to Heritage in Wales.
Of course.
I treat it as it's my castle.
And of course, because of that, you obviously love the place and get more visitors.
I've gotten to know it quite well. The visitor numbers have increased over the last 5 years.
Since you've been here?
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
So,
tell me, this is the area, this is the Goblin Tower.
it is.
What's the history of it?
Now, the Goblin Tower actually came slightly later. It was the last section of the castle to be built.
Yeah.
And the reason the Goblin Tower came into being was the well inside the castle was insufficient for the people within the castle, as with it being so high up, the actual well used to run dry every summer.
Right.
So they needed a constant supply of water, and that's where this one was built. Now, this one was actually fed by a spring, and because it was spring fed, it was a constant wet, fresh water supply, and the water would have to be carried from here up to the castle itself. Now, this well was so important, at the top, on this end, they actually had a drawbridge to close it off. In case the town was ever taken, they could still close off the drawbridge, and a portcullis gate on the far end, so you can actually close up here and actually defend your water supply from here.
God. So that's why this was built, in fact, to defend the well,
That's right.
to protect the well. And this is the well?
Yep, it's known as the Bloody Well.
Oh, right. That sounds good. Oh, my goodness. Now, it was even probably deeper than that once, was it?
It probably was a lot deeper than that. It's actually filled in with loose stone at the bottom.
Right. Now, there is a ghost story. That's why we're here. To do with the well. Can we go down there?
We can go down if you wish.
Yes, let's do the ghost story from down there.
No problem.
Which way?
Down this way.
Right. How deep is it, Trevor?
I've not actually measured it, but it's slightly deeper than the one in the castle, and the one in the castle is actually 60 feet.
Now, Trevor, I must be honest with you. I don't think I've ever been inside a well before. This is haunted.
It is the haunted tower of the castle.
Right.
And it's haunted by a son of Henry de Lacy. Now, Henry de Lacy was the gentleman who built the castle and town here.
Yep.
And Henry de Lacy had two sons, one heir, one spare.
Yeah.
But his spare, or his younger son, was actually killed at his castle in Pontefract.
Yeah.
Where he went over the battlements whilst chasing a ball and fell to his death.
Yeah.
But his elder son, Edmund, was actually fooling about on the top of the scaffold, right at the
on the top of this tower?
The very top.
Oh my God, yes.
He actually slipped, lost his footing from there, actually falling down, tumbling not only into the tower, but down into the base of the well here. So where we're actually stood here.
He died?
Where he actually landed last.
Oh my gosh. And his ghost?
His ghost supposedly haunts the tower here. People have said over the years, they've actually seen a small boy's face in the window, looking rather sad and dejected.
I can imagine. Yeah.
So,
now, because he was only 15, wasn't he?
He was only 15 years old.
So, in fact, father lost both of his sons from falls.
Yeah.
My
so
goodness.
After all those years of building work here,
Yeah.
he's actually walked away from the castle and never actually saw it complete. With his last son and heir gone,
Yeah.
there was nobody to leave it to. He left it to his daughter Alice, who married Thomas Earl of Lancaster, and he went into the Lancastrian line.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So the De Lacy line was finished in his
Yeah. What a tragedy. Now, you let people come down here, of course, don't you?
Yes.
Give them the key and they can wander down here themselves. I bet you don't get many at night.
No, it's not the sort of place you'd like to go at night.
I can imagine that. That is amazing. Now, I mean, I didn't think we'd actually get down here. It's been amazing. Trevor, thank you very much for giving us, well, something rather special, an insight into a well. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
This is the lovely little village of Cwm in Denbighshire. Behind me, the Blue Lion Inn, voted best pub and restaurant 2002 to 2003. Across the road from it, very interesting little village church. Not only is it a good pub, but it's also a very haunted pub. But they're much more interesting on the inside, so let's go in and have a look. This building was originally a farmhouse, as you can see as you come in. Absolutely incredible. Huge fireplace here. And the story is that while it was a farmhouse, there was a father and his two sons that lived here. They were always rowing. One day the row got so bad that the local beadle was actually brought in to stop the argument. He went away after calming things down. 2 days later, he came back again. But only one son was here. Father and eldest son said that the youngest son had left, gone abroad, never to come back. Everyone believed that. Until one day, when they were digging in the churchyard, something very strange happened. We'll go up to the church and have a look in a minute. But the ghost of the boy called John Henry still haunts the pub. Even to this day, people still say that they see things and hear things. The landlord, Terry, says that on many occasions he can hear someone calling his name. He said he had a member of staff that used to work for him that could tell you at any time of the day or night exactly where the ghost of John Henry was in this pub. But most of all, they hear footsteps up above the fireplace in one of the bedrooms, walking quite quickly along the floor. And then there's a large, loud, rattling type thud as something hits the floor, possibly a body. No one's sure what happened, but everyone knows that the ghost of John Henry still haunts this pub. But the second part to the story is what happened when they were excavating in the church. The church is not far away from the pub. In fact, it was very easy in those days for folks to come straight out of the church, straight into the pub. But remember, of course, hundreds of years ago, this wasn't a pub and was nothing but a farmhouse. Here, the quaint little church. One day, when they were excavating, at the back of the church, they were building this tiny little extension here. And of course, they had to dig down the footings. And of course, there were graves here. But they found a strange grave. They found a skeleton in a grave, not in a coffin. In fact, the skeleton was actually lying on top of another coffin underneath there now, which was rather strange. What they believe happened was that the father and elder brother murdered John Henry for some reason in the farmhouse, brought him over here, opened up one of the graves and laid him on top of the coffin and filled it in. And they believe that's why the ghost of John Henry still haunts the Blue Lion pub to this day, because although he is buried in consecrated ground, he wasn't buried in his own grave. And they say that on many occasions people see a figure wearing old-fashioned clothes, dressed as a farmer, with his trousers tied with string, wearing a sackcloth on his shoulders and underneath a waistcoat. And he walks from where the extension is, down this path and back to the pub, his haunt, waiting, I believe, to be given a decent burial in his very own grave. This is a very strange and much more modern ghost story. People often say to me, why are all ghosts dressed in old-fashioned clothes? Well, of course they're not. But this story concerns a phantom aeroplane, first seen in 1987 above the town of Abergele. Many people saw this plane, a large Second World War type transport plane, coming very low over the town. It was old, it seemed to be black in colour and rusty. It came so low over the town that people thought it was going to crash. And then for absolutely no reason, while they were watching, it just vanished. Quite a few of the townspeople made inquiries. They rang RAF Valley on Anglesey to see if a plane had been lost or had crashed. There were no reports whatsoever of a plane crashing. And then a few years later, here at Llangyrnu, little village in Denbighshire, the parents were picking up the children, and all of a sudden, along the valley, very, very low, came this plane. The same plane. Black, rusty, very, very low, looked as if it was from the Second World War. It was so low that some of the parents and the children actually dived to the ground. They thought it was going to crash on the village. But it continued very low, heading towards the hills. Everyone thought it was going to crash into the hills, but it just somehow managed to lift itself and struggle over the top of the hill. They waited for the crash, the explosion and the smoke. Nothing happened. They made phone calls to the local police and the fire brigade. No plane had crashed anywhere. That phantom plane had just vanished. But how can you see the ghost of an inanimate object like an aeroplane? I believe that it's not the ghost of the plane, but the ghost of the people that were inside it, that when this plane crashed, wherever it did, caused a recording. And that recording is seen over and over again by certain people on certain days. Whether it was the anniversary of the day that a plane crashed round here, I haven't yet managed to research it, but I probably will, just to see if it really did happen. If some real crash caused that phantom plane to reappear in the skies above this quiet Welsh little village. I'm in a park in the middle of Llanwrst. We were looking for a very haunted castle, reputedly one of the most haunted castles in Wales. But when I rang them, they told me that they didn't want to publicise their ghosts, although they got a very extensive website. I think possibly they were too frightened of their ghosts. But as we were driving by, here in the middle of this park, I've seen this incredible druidic circle in a park. Now, of course, the Druids and Wales go together rather a lot. The Druids, of course, right back to Celtic times, were priests, soothsayers, storytellers, and of course, much revered by everyone. Even, of course, when Julius Caesar first landed, he wrote a report saying that on the seashore were thousands of Celts painted with woad, and dotted amongst them were the Druids with large staffs uttering oaths up to the sky, which terrified the Roman soldiers to such an extent that they actually stood there while the Celts attacked them, and many were killed before they actually gathered their senses. But here we have a druidic circle, but not a real one, because this was actually put here for one of the Eisteddfods. But I thought, yes, we can't do Haunted Wales without a story of stone circles, and I have a book with me called Mysterious Britain, with of course a picture of Stonehenge, a much larger stone circle. But this bit interested me rather a lot. Legends can also turn into ghost stories, and vice versa. People researching into ghost lore frequently find a particular story which is told locally about a village's most famous ghost. And although everyone knows the story, no one has actually seen the ghost or knows when it was last seen. Thus a single sighting can become a legend, handed down from father to son, with slight amendments in the story as the years pass, but still with a basis of fact. Ancient sites often have their ghost stories, and the following quotation from Elliot O'Donnell's Phantoms of the Night may be a race memory of the activities which were carried out at stone circles. Singing and dancing ghosts are not uncommon in Wales, especially in places where there are druidical stones and circles. They are generally invisible, and the sounds of their voices, the pattering of their bare feet, and an eeriness in the atmosphere are the only indications of their presence. If you wanted to stay in a haunted hotel in Wales and you looked them up on the internet, this place would come up number one. This is the Castle Hotel at Conway. It's built on the site of a Sistine chapel. At the back of it, St Mary's Church and Churchyard. And there's also a plague pit. It's got an abundance of ghosts in here. The ghost of a little girl, a man. There's the ghost of what they believe to be a monk. People have seen ghosts in their bedrooms here. And one of the bedrooms, I think it's bedroom 104, has a large four-poster bed and an inscription on it: "O Lord, protect me through the night." But we've got some witnesses inside that have actually experienced ghostly goings on here at this hotel. So come inside with me and let's go and meet them. We're in room 204. Gina, you're the housekeeper. We've actually got an audience with us. We've actually got the North Wales Weekly News actually covering the story while we're here. But this is one of the many haunted bedrooms.
Yeah, one of the many.
And have things happened to you here?
Oh yes, an awful lot of things. I think you often sense that somebody's with you in the room.
Right, when there isn't anyone, of course.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, but you just get that feeling. I've worked in here a few times. I've had the television coming on and the fan coming on in the bathroom. Sort of noises.
It plays havoc with electrics for some reasons, you know, so as you've said, lights and televisions and things like that.
Yeah, and
Poltergeist,
things get missing. Things get moved around.
Do they come back?
They do come back after an hour or two's hunting, I would say.
What, back to the same place or in a different place?
A different place.
Really?
They usually turn up eventually. It's as though somebody's playing a little bit of a joke on you.
Yeah. Have you seen anything?
I have actually.
Oh.
Yes.
Such as?
I've seen a young girl about 12 years old, I would say.
Right.
Shoulder length blonde hair. Through a glass door. I just actually looked up. She was there and she smiled at me.
So she knew you were there?
Well,
obviously.
It appeared as though she was looking at me, and I actually looked at her and sort of smiled a little bit. It's as though she was acknowledging me and accepting me as being here.
Good luck. Because I don't know whether you know this story or not, but there is actually a ghost story that goes back to 1927 of a young girl that came to work here when it became a hotel in 1927, when I think one of the a larger chain took it over then, and there was a lady called Dutton who owned the place. And this young girl came to work here, and she kept complaining of being unwell and saying that she feared she was going to die here, and the manageress told her not to be so stupid and to get on with the work, and she did actually die here in this hotel, and they buried her across the road in St Mary's Churchyard. Yeah. Just literally at the back of you, isn't it? And apparently ghostly things started happening.
She actually died in the hotel.
She died in the hotel, and ghostly things started happening after she was buried in the churchyard, because apparently her wishes were that she was to be taken back to Anglesey, where she came from. And eventually they brought in a priest here, And he tried to exorcise the ghost and couldn't, and then a medium came in and they said the only way that they would do it any good would be to exhume the body and take it and rebury it, and they did. They dug her up from St Mary's churchyard and took her back and buried her in Anglesey. And apparently, for a period of time, everything calmed down. But it looks as if she's still around.
She was smiling.
Well, there I see. Yeah, well, she was probably just popped back to tell you that she was happy because she'd gone to Anglesey. But, so basically, anybody wants a decent haunted hotel in Conway, then the castle's the place.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ladies, thank you very much.
Okay.
And of course, there has to be stories with cellars in a place like this. Graham, you're one of the directors of the hotel, and I believe that something has actually happened to you down here in this cellar.
Yeah, it was on a busy night, and right in the middle of service, as you can imagine, we're busy in the kitchen, and I needed something from the cellar. So I, as I've done thousands of times before, ran down the cellar. There's about 6 lights for me to get from one end of the cellar to the other end of the cellar.
Can we do it?
We can do it.
Come on, man. Let's reenact it.
So we switch on the first light.
Yes.
Carry on going.
Yep.
And the next light. And I continue switching lights on as I'm going. I'm sometimes
Running.
Running. I need this thing quick in the middle of service.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Oh,
Yeah.
The next light is on.
Yep. Oh, it's big, isn't it?
Oh yeah. And then the next one. And it's at this point here, which is probably halfway through the cellar now. There's another 3 or 4 lights down that way.
Yes.
As I turn this light on, before it actually flickers on, something pushes me to one side here and knocks me up against the, against the wall.
Right.
But not a solid push, more of a stroke aside sort of thing, pushing me.
As
to
if
one
something
side.
had brushed you aside as it was going by, or...
Yeah. Immediately I felt an intense coldness, and the hairs of my arms was sort of standing up as erect as possible. So really, really strange.
You'd got the light on?
Yeah, well you can imagine.
Yeah, light on, you're still running.
Bit of a second before it come on, and
You're here.
bang, this is where it hit me.
And then the light was on. Did you see anything?
Nothing at all.
Absolutely no sign. You obviously felt it, but it wasn't like a, how can I put it? It wasn't solid.
No, it was more of a stroke. I could put it as a stroke aside, a push towards.
But heavy, because it managed to get you up against the wall.
You're in my way.
Get out my way.
Yeah.
Did you sense anything as well?
Oh yeah, freezing cold, and laughing to myself more than anything that something had done this to me.
Yeah. But there was nobody in here, of course.
No,
That's
no,
obvious.
no.
Now, you were, I believe, a disbeliever.
Oh yeah, a major disbeliever.
Yeah. Now?
There's something there. There's something there.
Really?
Yeah.
Graham, that's fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome.
And we're in Carnarvon. Behind us, Carnarvon Castle. King Edward II was born here, and of course invested as the first English Prince of Wales. With me, Steve, the landlord of the Anglesey Arms, which is behind us. Originally a customs house.
Customs and weights and measures, yeah.
And of course here, to the right of us, the original hanging tower. Back of us, of course, the courts, the prison, and all the poor unfortunates were actually hanged, strangled to death from that tower, right next to your pub.
Yeah.
And of course you've got ghosts.
Yes, we have, yes.
Well,
yeah.
can we, you've even got a haunted bedroom, I believe.
We have, yes, room 3, yeah.
And a haunted bar, of course, things happen.
Things happening in the bar, yes. Yeah.
Can we go in and have a look?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cheers, lead on. Right, inside the pub, bar, haunted.
Definitely, yeah.
What happens?
Well, a lot of the locals have seen, I've just seen one thing happens, is that the glasses that are in the top here, they just sort of come out and hover for a second, and then they just drop. But
And
the
smash?
amazing thing, no, they don't smash, that's the amazing thing. And yet, sometimes the optics, we've had a bottle actually fall down onto the bar top, onto the floor, and that doesn't smash, and nothing spills out of it, and that's what we can't believe about it.
So in other words, it's for want of a better word, an unseen hand.
Yeah,
it looks like
yeah,
that lifts it out and takes it down rather than letting it drop.
Yeah, it takes it down a certain way, then it falls and it bounces a couple of times.
And they don't drop.
They
don't
break.
drop.
They don't They don't actually break. I mean,
It's amazing, isn't it?
I've dropped glasses on there and they just shatter straight.
Well, we're talking about a sort of a hard floor, aren't we?
It's very hard floor.
Yeah.
Glasses, when we're busy and I knock them out of there, they always smash. Always.
Right. Now, you mentioned something about the dartboard, which is over here.
Well, like you see in there now at the moment, someone's been playing darts.
Yeah.
And they leave the darts in. Normally, if a dart falls out, it falls straight down.
Yes.
But these tend to jump out the board and end up sort of over in that sort of area.
Well, it's not possible. It is. It happens, obviously.
Well, the first couple of times I thought, it can't be because, gravity just falls, it might hit the rubber mat and bounce. But I've actually seen them actually stood at the bar there and it just comes straight out and lands on the floor without bouncing first. Just one bounce over there, which is quite amazing to see.
Not natural.
No, it's definitely not. No, there's something happens.
Yeah, and of course things happen upstairs to your customers in the bedroom.
One customer, after about 3 or 4 days, she phoned up and said, is someone actually, she felt someone sat on the end of the bed.
Good grief. Can we go up?
Yes.
Have a look?
Yeah.
Great. Right, room 3.
Yeah.
The haunted bedroom. And so tell me, do things happen to people? Do they see things or?
No, the woman actually phoned up. It was totally out of the blue and we weren't expecting it. And she actually woke up in the middle of the night and sensed someone sat on the edge of the bed. She could feel the weight on the mattress. And she could sense something was there.
Was she alone?
No, she was with her husband.
But obviously he was in the twin bed, so he was asleep in the other
And
bed.
she actually woke him up. But by the time she'd woke him up,
Whatever had happened had gone.
Had gone and there was nothing there.
But she didn't come down in the morning and say, by the way, last night I had a ghost
No, it
experience.
was about 3 or 4 days later she phoned up, so it must have been playing on her mind.
Far more credible when something like that happens, because you're talking of, I mean, obviously they know the stories of the place. You'd think they'd mention it when they came down for breakfast.
Well, when they come to the breakfast room, I thought she'd have mentioned it.
Yeah.
Nothing
So it dwells on the mind,
Yeah.
and then
she
2 or 3 days later the phone goes.
Yeah,
My
she
goodness.
actually asked if the pub was haunted, so I said yes.
Yeah, you see. Yeah. And of course, when you think what you can see out of this bedroom window, you think that there, right next door to us, is the hanging tower, where I shudder to imagine how many poor unfortunate people were actually strangled to death with a rope, taking at least a quarter of an hour to die of slow strangulation, because in those days they didn't drop you and break your neck, they just suspended you and let you strangle to death, kicking, writhing. So we're talking a horrendous death.
Not very nice at
So
all,
yeah, so no wonder things happen. So basically this is the room to request if you want to stay in a haunted bedroom opposite a hanging tower with, would you believe, a scaffold outside, but of course it's a different sort of scaffold, unfortunately, because you're having renovation work doing, which is another reason why things happen. When building work's being done on an old property, it tends to disturb ghosts. Either they don't like what's being done, or sometimes if you're knocking a building about, removing bricks and things, it tends to do a little bit similar to what happens when a cassette player falls on the floor. The jolt makes the recording come on again, and it's a bit like that with ghosts. It causes the recording to be played again, which is possibly what's happening here with the work that's going on outside. But who knows? But so this is the place to stay.
It is, yeah. If you want,
You
can feel and sense things. I mean, you can hear people walking. And if you go out and have a look in the corridor, there's nobody there.
Really?
I've heard it a few times, but I don't know.
Wonderful. Steve,
I don't know.
thank you very much indeed, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's day 2, end of the day, getting dusk, I'm getting tired, but we just had to come here to Montgomery Churchyard to find the robber's grave. This is the grave of John Newton Davis. He was hanged for highway robbery, but he was innocent. He was hanged in 1821, and in those days, highway robbery, along with 199 other crimes, was still a hanging offence in this country. Mr. Davis had become the bailiff to a lady called Mrs. Morris in Shropshire at Oakfield Farm. He turned the farm round, but by doing this he'd upset 2 local men. A man called Robert Parker, who wanted to buy some of the land and the farm to extend his own, and another man called Pierce, whose ancestors once owned Oakfield Farm. They decided to set Davis up, and one night when he was at market at Welshpool, riding back late one night, the two men confronted him on the road and made out that he was a robber and he'd robbed one of the two men. He was brought before the Welsh magistrates, who believed these two local men, and he was sentenced to be hanged, and was hanged by slow strangulation in 1821. But as he was dying, as he was choking and writhing and kicking, he made a vow and asked God to let the grass never grow on his grave for at least one generation. And in 1852 it was recorded that still no grass grew on this grave. A rose tree has now been planted here. There is plenty of grass growing around it now, but I've just found the poor dilapidated grave actually collapsed. Something as famous as this, I think, should be put right. This is Davis's lasting headstone, the robber's grave, and they say that his tormented soul still wanders around this churchyard to this very day. Hello, my name's Richard Felix, and I'm going to take you on a ghostly tour of South Wales. South Wales, land of myths, legends, the original British, the Celts, druids, dragons, magic, and of course ghosts. What better place to start this tour than here at Cardiff Castle? So many ghost stories that we could take up the whole video just at this place, but of course we haven't got time for that. But we have various stories to tell you. This place, as we see it now, was actually built for the second Marquis of Bute. He died here in 1848 in a room just at the back of the library, and his ghost has been seen on many occasions walking through the fireplace of the library and heading towards the room where he died. There's also the ghost of a lady dressed in a cream dress that wanders around the grounds and also in the buildings. Her name is Sarah. She is usually a malevolent ghost, an angry ghost. But if you know her name and you call her Sarah, then she calms down. This is the 12th century castle keep. It was originally built of wood, and this is where Robert, Duke of Normandy, eldest son of William I, William the Conqueror, was imprisoned for 8 years. And standing on the other side of the moat, on a dark, lonely, windy night, is often seen a lady standing at the other side of the drawbridge and waving forlornly and looking up at this castle keep. It's believed that she is waving to Duke Robert. His ghost has also been seen wandering around inside this place where he was kept for over 8 years. He was in fact imprisoned in Wales for over 28 years. But of course, it's impossible to tell whether it's really him or not that's here. And how he could see that lady, no one knows. Because when he arrived at this castle, his eyes were put out and he was blinded. And they say that his ghost still wanders to this day around this old castle keep. I'm standing on the B4233 just outside Monmouth, and here in 1850 was a very serious road accident, but it was a road accident concerning a coach and four. It was thundering down Anchor Hill in a thunderstorm, and the coachman lost it. He managed to get round the first bend, but the second bend here, it went onto two wheels and slewed over and smashed into this wall. 4 horses with legs flailing as the coach tumbled over into the field. There were 5 passengers on board and 3 of them were killed. And legend has it that on dark, stormy nights, when the atmosphere is the same, and sometimes actually on that anniversary, a reconstruction is seen here, a vague reconstruction of a coach thundering down here, hitting the wall, turning over, and when it smashes into tiny pieces of wood, it just disappears completely from view. Now, I've been wandering around looking for the exact spot, and I went up to the top of Anchor Hill to a farmhouse, and the gentleman said, "Where did you get that story from?" And I said, "Oh, well, we looked it up on the internet and it's in various ghost books." And he said, "Well, I know the gentleman that wrote the original story in the 1960s. Took the phone out, dialed the gentleman, and I spoke to him. His name was Stephen Clark, and he told me the whole story exactly as I've just told to you, but I actually got it almost from the horse's mouth." This is the graveyard in Llangyafol Crwcorni in Monmouthshire. Here, the graves of the Price family. And this particular one here, the grave of Fanny Price, the beloved wife of Henry. Henry Price was the landlord of the legendary Skirrid Inn. And that's why I'm here in this village to tell of the many ghost stories of that magnificent old inn. Over here, in front of me, the Skirrid Mountain, the Holy Mountain, mountain of myths and legend. It's believed that a large fissure occurred after a bolt of lightning hit it on the day of the crucifixion. But we're now off to the pub, the local pub of this village, to find many, many ghosts. So why not come with me to Wales's oldest inn? And I've arrived outside the Skirrid Inn. Magnificent old stone Welsh building. Goes back probably to the 12th century. The oldest inn in Wales. And to prove it, it actually says it there. And the sign, of course, up there showing the Holy Mountain, the Skirrid Mountain, with the bolt of lightning causing the fissure on the day of the crucifixion. But I'm going in to this fantastic old inn. It's got an absolute wealth of ghost stories. The beer's excellent, and so is the food. So why not come and join me? And here I am inside the Skirrid Inn. Darryl, how are you?
Hi, fine, Richard.
Long time no see. Must be at least, what, 5 weeks?
At least.
Since Most Haunted came and took
Yeah,
you over?
It is.
Literally? Yeah, anything happened since?
Where do you start?
Exactly.
Bright lights,
Right.
tables moving, doors opening, devil's cup emptying.
Just the same, every night?
Every night. Sometimes more than often. You know.
Really? And of course you've just told me that you actually now see
the orbs.
orbs without a camera.
Without any camera at all, I can actually point them out and you can take a photograph and people can actually see them.
That
on
is
the cameras.
amazing.
But having said that, we've had people in who can see them as well.
Really? Wow.
We had one lady on Friday night who wouldn't even go into the bathroom upstairs. Toilet rolls and rolling that not sort of unravelling, but spinning all night, and appearing to be 3 times the size in the morning.
And that's not because they've been dipped in the toilet or anything like that. Crikey. And the Devil's Cup, I mean, that goes back to sort of folklore time, doesn't it?
Well, it goes back as far as William Shakespeare, Midsummer Night's Dream.
Yeah.
You've got Puck,
Yeah.
the mischievous sprite, but in Wales it's actually spelled slightly different. It's PWCK.
Right.
So obviously Wordsworth just changed the W to the U,
Yeah.
where it goes. So
And you fill that cup. I know you do. I've seen you do it.
Every evening at around about 11:30, fill the cup. Sometimes it's gone down an inch, other times it's gone down to half full. So we fill that cup every night.
And it's there above the fireplace now.
Yeah.
Can we go and have a look?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, then. Excuse me, ladies. Do you mind if I just? I won't bother you for long.
And don't tip it.
I won't tip it. That's it. And
That's
now,
gone down since
go on.
last night.
Tell me, you filled that,
I filled that to the top last night,
right?
and that's gone down by what? 2 inches?
Yeah, and I've seen you do it when we were here, and I was here
I've
next
seen it
morning,
when it
and
was
I've
out
seen it
there.
exactly the same as that. So he had a drink last night,
Somebody did, and it wasn't me.
and you were the last one.
I was the last one in.
So you know full well no one else comes in and tips it out, or has
11:30 I
it,
filled that last night.
so it must be the devil.
Not somebody.
Smells a bit.
Oh yes, yes.
Right, can we?
I don't know if you can get up that far.
Can we have a wander around and have a look at some of the wonders of the building? Including the hanging post, of course,
Right.
and into the dining room, which you've done up a little bit since we were last
We
here.
have, yeah. We've stripped all the panelling off, which obviously now looks a lot better. It's been painted over in black paint.
Doesn't it just?
Strip that off.
Yeah.
So reputably from one of Her Majesty's ships.
That's the panelling from
Yeah.
perhaps the cabin or something like that of what was the ship called? Any ideas?
HMS Robinson.
Wow, you even...
So they say.
Yeah. And
No proof to that.
no, of course not. But I mean, obviously ghostly goings on in here as well.
Yeah, we have plates rolling around the top of the panelling.
Yeah.
People have been having their Sunday luncheon plates have apparently leapt off onto the floor.
Crikey.
And 1 or 2 people do say that they feel seasick when they're in here.
Well, again, it's obviously due to the fact
Due to
that,
the
that
power,
yeah, and of course the presence of either a sea captain or a naval officer has been sort of picked up in here
Has
as
been
well.
seen, yeah.
Yeah.
There's also a cat.
Really?
Yeah.
Ship's
Well,
cat?
Ship's cat. A lot of people say, I like your cat. Well, we don't have a cat, so
Amazing.
strange.
Right, and of course you've found a fireplace.
Found the original fireplace in the back there.
Yeah.
Which,
That's quite exciting when you start pulling away things and finding things like that.
Yeah, we never found any treasure or anything like that, which was
That's a shame.
supposed to be buried up there, but we never found anything like that.
Never mind.
Unfortunately. But
Yeah, but what you have got is treasure. Well, I think you've got treasure through here with this incredible staircase and the hanging beam. So let's go and have a look. And here it is.
Yeah.
Quite amazing. I mean, basically, this was, of course, used as courts, prison.
Yeah, the sizes for Monmouthshire,
Yeah,
or as it was then, I think Gwent, wasn't it then?
yeah,
But that's the original hanging beam.
and executions. And this is it. And
That's the one.
I tell you something, it's quite amazing. I mean, obviously here, hangman's rope, not original, but of the exact size
Yes.
of a hangman's
We've
rope.
had to stick an extra knot in it because people keep putting their heads in it.
That's the trouble. Drunks might just go and do something awful. But I mean, the story is that it's possible that this was actually once higher.
Yes. So you got the drop from the staircase.
Yeah,
But if we look from the other side, you can actually see the scorch marks on the beam.
exactly. And in fact, here, up there, are the actual grooves in the beam. And I have actually, with this rope, put that rope on these marks, and they do fit exactly. And so, in other words, as the rope was swinging backwards and forwards with a body on it, that's what's scored those beams like that. And of course, there are stories of the sound of the rope actually swinging backwards and forwards and creaking on that
Right, yeah.
beam.
Yeah. That's right.
Ghostly goings on.
You get a lot of temperature drops in the corner of the stairs.
Really?
As though somebody's actually stood in the staircase.
Yeah.
And people have commented that they've passed people on the stairs, but there's been nobody there, or somebody's had the back of the head felt.
Yeah.
Or coldness down the back of the neck.
Gosh.
So it's quite eerie. You can sit on the staircase some evenings and just sit and watch the orbs coming through the doors.
Gosh, a helmeted figure's been seen as well.
There is.
Yeah, wandering around.
Probably something to do with the uprising or something like that, when they're calling the troops to arms.
Yes, of course. And then onwards up the staircase, and there's the original courtroom.
Yeah, there is.
Still here.
Yeah.
Which, of course, you now use as bedrooms. And, of course, are available to the public.
Oh, yeah, if they want to stay the night. Or if they dare stay the night.
Exactly.
Some people have fled in the early hours of the morning.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Fantastic old four-poster bed. And of course this is part of the courtroom. This is the actual bit where the trial's probably...
This is the actual part where the trial was. The wall probably wasn't there. At the back is probably just a curtain across to make one big room.
Yeah.
Right through. But this part would be used as the court, and the other part would have been used as the judge's retiring chamber.
Yeah, the chambers, withdrawing room. Yeah. And it's reputed, of course, that Judge Jeffreys actually presided over the courts here. Can be mistaken, of course, we're in Monmouthshire, and of course it was the Duke of Monmouth's rising.
That's right.
But of course that was down in Somerset.
Yes.
But of course they reckon that he actually, for want of a better word, practised here before the risings.
Well, apparently 180 people were hung.
Here.
Yes.
That's an awful lot of people, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And of course most of them would have been sentenced to actually hang here.
Yes.
In this room.
So they actually went from here and were taken down into the cell.
And
Which is now a bathroom.
Yeah, and that through that doorway there is where the prisoners, the condemned, would actually be taken by the guards down here into this little room here and spent their last night.
Last night, while everybody else was downstairs in the alehouse having a jolly good time.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, of course, we're talking rough justice. We're talking of if you were condemned, you would probably be hanged the next day.
Yes.
Unless it was Sunday. And then you'd actually have an extra day, and that was all. But literally the next day, in here one day, the next morning, 8 o'clock or whatever it was, out through the door, off the staircase, dangling, swinging, choking, writhing, vomiting, taking anything up to a quarter of an hour to die of slow strangulation.
Yeah.
So there's no wonder that there are so many ghosts.
Cut them down and leave them lying on the flag at the bottom
Oh
of the
yeah,
stairs.
yes of course.
And then cart them out the back door and thrown onto a truck and away you went.
And away you went. Buried, often in unconsecrated ground. If you were a murderer, you could well have been gibbeted. That's hung up in a metal cage. Or of course publicly dissected. Probably at the Shire Hall in Monmouth. Anything rather than giving you a decent burial.
Yeah.
So that's really, I think, one of the reasons why there's probably so many tormented souls still lingering around the Skirrid.
And apparently we've got two characters still residing in the courtroom.
Oh really?
Hovering about. One could be the hanging judge. You just
of
don't
course,
know.
yes
and
indeed.
There is probably the hangman.
Yeah,
because they have two spirits are seen, one sitting, one standing just behind to one side. Could be the hangman and the judge.
Crikey. Can we get round to the doorway, to the actual entrance to the condemned cell?
Yeah.
Alright, let's go and have a look around there. Now, there's also a story, of course, of the ghost of a lady that's been seen wandering around the place. And that's believed to be, is that right, Fanny Price?
So a lady called Fanny Price, believed to have died, well there are two stories. One is that she died of consumption in bedroom number 3, which is a smaller room. People have woken up in the morning and felt somebody sat on the end of the bed.
That's this
one here.
This actual bedroom here?
Yeah.
Bedroom number 3, right. And she died in there?
She died. Or somebody died. They believe it was Fanny Price.
Right.
But there is also a story of a lady who died or perished in the woods, which are called White Lady Woods.
Oh yes.
Apparently she perished one evening after having a domestic, fled from Lanby Angle Court, out into the woods, and they found her next morning frozen to a tree.
Gosh.
Now there is a connection with the Skirrid and Llanfihangel Court via a tunnel, which has since been passed through by the introduction of the A465.
Oh, what a shame.
Which cut right through it, and they did actually find it.
Really?
And quick look, and I think they bricked it up or filled it in. So possibly that lady from here was having a bit of a fling with the guy over at the court, using the passageway.
Of course, as you would.
Got caught and ran from the...
and perished in the woods.
From the house. So there's two stories, because one is that it could be Fanny Price that's the same person.
And of course, Fanny Price was the wife of the landlord Henry Price.
Yes.
And of course, they're all buried
in the churchyard.
Down in the churchyard, where we've been already, and her ghost's also said to wander the churchyard, and from there
so you
back
can
to
actually
here.
drive into the village on a foggy night, and you can see somebody stood in your headlamps, and as you get closer, they just fade and disappear.
And that's probably the ghost of Fanny Price.
You never know.
Condemned cell?
Yeah.
Right. Has anything happened to you, Darryl, since you've been here?
Oh.
Because you've not been here very long, have you?
No, we've been here since December the 9th.
Yeah.
The first thing that actually happened was we were showing somebody around as we're doing now. We took them into the courtroom, and he loved the room, loved the bathroom, didn't like the ceiling.
Oh yes.
The ceiling has been artexed.
Correct, I noticed that, yeah.
Thing. He did nothing but moan about the ceiling. We came out
not being contemporary to the rest of the building.
Yeah. Big chap had to bend down to get through the door. Stood out here. Before this little mirror went on there, we had a vase on there, and the vase leapt off there and landed at our feet.
Wow.
And
he was with you?
He was with us, and that's the first sighting that we had of anything, mainly because he was moaning about the ceiling. His friend, however, never said a word. But the vase came off the wall, landed at roughly where our feet are now, and he took 3 strides and was down the stairs.
And didn't stay?
It wasn't very long before he left. He had a brandy before he went.
I think he did. Crikey.
Yeah, so that was the first one.
Yeah.
The second one was we've had a £10 note travel the full length of the bar.
Yeah.
Which, when it got to the end of the bar, it carried on going for 2 or 3 feet and then dropped, but it had change on top of it.
But it went off the bar and levitated, continued,
and then dropped.
You saw that as well, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, not just me, unfortunately. There was 8 other people who witnessed it.
Have you taken down their written statements?
Well, one of them has done it on camera, I think, hasn't he?
Crikey.
The other is the cell door, which opens and shuts.
Oh yeah, shall we go down and have a look at this? Because this is really quite something. When you think this is obviously, I presume, the original. Well, the original door. I mean, it looks extremely old, as does the rest. Yeah. And little door here, and in here, just opens like that, I presume.
Yeah.
And of course, this is only a tiny part of the actual condemned cell.
Yeah. Where they were kept. As boil house and storeroom, but it is on the other side. It's a false wall. It's the other side of the bathroom.
Yeah.
So the prisoners would have spent the night in there. They bring them out onto the staircase.
Over here.
Over you go.
And over you go.
Yeah.
And of course, they've heard footsteps on the stairs. As I say, they've heard the noise of the rope.
Swinging ropes.
Yeah. And I mean, you and I actually, we did a vigil here. Yeah. We were sat on this staircase. I was sat here. You were sat there. And twice.
The door opened.
That door opened. That's a bit better. I'm much refreshed after that. What a place. I mean, so many ghosts. The ghost of Fanny Price. The ghost of how many people? 182 people executed, hanged in that stairwell. The ghost of a jailer. A man also apparently stabbed himself to death in the condemned cell to avoid being hanged. And they say his ghost haunts it. The ghost of Judge Jeffreys. Honestly, one of the most haunted places, certainly in Wales, possibly in the country. And even another story out here. This is the original mounting block. And of course, a horse would be here. You would walk up these steps to mount a horse. And they say that they see the ghost of Owen Glendower, the man, of course, that was fighting in the 1400s to secure Wales's future, to rid the English from Wales. He did very well. He fought for 4 years against the English even managed to establish his own Welsh Parliament, and also started talking to the French to become allies of the French. But unfortunately it all went wrong and he had to go into hiding. Legend has it he had a magic stone which would conjure up storms and bad weather, and it could also make him invisible. And when he disappeared in 1415, some say killed by the English, but of course the Welsh said that he'd become invisible, had gone into hiding and would not come out of hiding until the English left Wales. This is the very stone that he mounted his horse to go and fight the English, and this was also used by successive princes of Wales and kings of England. What power, what energy must be emblazoned into this very stone. I'm now at Llanwit Major in Glamorgan. This is St Dunot's Castle, a very haunted castle. Haunted by Lady Stradling, an elderly lady seen wandering along the long gallery wearing high heels and a long flowing dress. She was murdered somewhere in that castle. She's not the only ghost. There's also an evil looking witch that's been seen wandering around in the armoury. And there's an incredible story about Sir Harry Stradling, who lived here. He was captured by a Breton pirate called Colin Dolphin in 1415. He was held ransom by the pirate, and the pirate wanted 2,000 crowns to release him. He couldn't afford to pay it, and he had to sell all of his land and his properties, both in Glamorgan and also in Monmouthshire. He was then released back here to his beautiful castle. A year later, his henchmen noticed a pirate ship sailing here in the bay. It was obviously coming to either raid at St Dunot's or to replenish. So what did they do? They put false lights on the rocks and then lured the ship onto a sandbank down at Nash Cove. They rushed down, killed all the sailors, and brought Colin Dolphin back to the castle and put on a special trial. They sentenced him to death, a horrendous death. They took him back down to Tresillian Cave and buried him up to his neck in the sand and waited for the tide to come in. And they say that on a dark, windy night, you can still hear the ghostly screams of Colin Dolphin, screaming for mercy as the tide comes in and covers his head. I've just been round the corner to have a word with one of the locals to make sure I know how to pronounce the place. And here I am at Llancaerfawr Manor in Mid Glamorgan, or Caerphilly. Last time I was standing here on this pathway, it was snowing heavily. I was stuck here for the night and I had to go in there to do a vigil. Luckily with other people. I didn't like it. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning. Lots and lots of ghostly stories to this place. This goes back to about 1537, the house does. Was the home of the Pritchard family, but it stands on much earlier foundations, on medieval foundations. So why not come inside and have a look for some ghosts with me? Although nothing actually happened to me on the night, even now I'm filled with trepidation. But anyway, I'm not alone. I've got Enid with me. You, Enid, are a costumed...
I'm a costumed interpreter in Llancaerch.
Oh, right. I see.
I've been working here for the past 12 years. So.
Really? Now, unfortunately, we couldn't film you in costume.
No, sadly.
But things have happened to you, apparently, in here?
Oh, yes.
Ghostly things?
Ghostly things, yes. In fact, most of us who work in the house have had different experiences of one kind or another. But I've had a few experiences in the garden and in the manor house.
All right.
Especially on the top floor.
Really? Now, Ed was talking to me earlier, and of course he used to live here.
That's right.
And he was telling me that nothing actually ever happened to him in the house, but he actually saw a gentleman in Victorian costume with a stovepipe hat in the garden, and it ran straight down to the bottom and went straight through the wall and vanished. Says it didn't frighten him either.
This is the strange part about it. A lot of people have talked about this gentleman, a lot of people have actually seen him.
Yeah.
And no one ever seems to be actually frightened by these sort of things that happen. What can be frightening are noises, sudden noises and really loud noises.
But make you jump, in fact.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. But funnily enough, ghosts themselves, when people see them, they're not usually frightened.
Not in
which
this
is strange,
house.
isn't it?
Yes.
So, can we do a quick tour
Absolutely.
around the house?
Absolutely.
I know, having been here already, here's the kitchens, of course, and I know for a fact there's a ghost in here of a girl called Martha.
Some people call her Martha, some people call her Matty.
Right.
But she's been reported as being in this kitchen, and this seems to be her area here.
Right.
All around this area here. And the main report we've had is that she actually appeared out of the wall.
Oh, right.
Well, if you can imagine this house has not always looked like this because now we're in a museum. But back in the 1970s, this was a living room.
Yeah.
So here was this had long been bricked in. It was a modern fireplace, and there was a young man staying here that night, and it was he who saw her actually, and she just seemed to appear through the wall, dressed in clothes which suggest she comes from about 1780, 1800s. The way she's dressed, she just drifted to the wall, looked at him, and drifted back. And that is one time when someone really was frightened.
Yes.
Because he was, well, you imagine you're fast asleep.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you wake up. Something's woken you up, you don't know what. And all of a sudden someone just appears out of the wall. I mean,
yeah, I would think that is quite frightening to say the least. Absolutely. Yeah. Staircase, main staircase here is, of course, has ghosties on it. That's right, isn't it?
Yes, yes it does. According to what we've been told, there's a little boy on the 6th step up.
Really? Well, let's go and have a look this way. Now, correct me, but we've got a stone staircase here, and of course, as we go upstairs, it becomes a wooden staircase.
That's right.
Now, I have this because they say that there's sounds of children playing on the stairs, and children actually been seen on the stairs, but they say only on the stone part.
Only on the stone part.
Yeah.
I don't know why I can't explain these things at all, but it is on this part of the stairs that children are heard.
I've got a theory,
Right.
and it's to do with the stone tapes. I think a lot of ghostly sightings are actually recordings from a tragic or traumatic death, and I think that it actually gets recorded into the fabric of the building, and they believe that certain bits of a building, probably stone especially, have certain properties similar to recording tapes. And so in fact, on the anniversary of the death, when the atmosphere is similar or something like that, you actually see it again. But it's very much to do with stone. Look how much stone we've got in this place, of course.
Absolutely.
And here, of course, the stone stairs, and that's where they're seen. But that's only my theory. I don't know.
I've heard other people say this as well and talk about these stone tapes. And I think that you said earlier on that Edward said when he lived here never actually saw anything. And his sister says the same thing. But at that time, this house had never undergone any sort of upheaval.
No.
It was when they moved out, and then this house saw a lot of changes because it was being put back to
renovated,
where we would have been
decorated.
today. So there must have been a lot of disturbance there.
And it disturbs the spirits
I think
or
it
the
might have
ghosts. I
done.
agree with you.
I think it might.
Can we have a look upstairs?
Absolutely.
This is an original staircase, I presume, is it?
Apart from this woodwork, which is on the side, but the steps are the original steps.
Yeah. And now we come to the wooden part, of course.
Yes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, the Great Hall
The Great Hall
is in here.
Yes, and we do have another ghost here actually.
Really?
Yes, I've not seen
Look at
him.
this door.
I've not seen him. But again, quite a few of our visitors have.
Yeah.
And he's actually sitting there.
On the window
upper
seat.
part, on the window seat. And judging, again, by the way he's dressed, he seems to come from Tudor times.
Oh, right.
So he must have been a very early visitor to this house, actually.
Yeah.
And the house was built in 1530, Tudor times.
Yeah.
But he sits there.
Right.
And,
Now, they've also heard footsteps, apparently, wandering around, padding up and down. And, of course, King Charles I stayed here, I believe, or dined here.
He dined here.
Yeah.
When he was on his way from Cardiff to Brecon, then he called here.
5th of August, 1645, yeah. Not long before the end of the Civil War.
That's right.
He could have been padding up and down this floor for all we know.
Well, it might well have been him, I don't know.
Probably dined here in this room.
Well, this is where he probably would have dined, probably, because this is the largest room in the house. So you would have wanted to have
impressed the king.
So it would have been the largest room.
But most of your sightings are up again.
Upstairs.
Shall we carry on up?
Yes. Do you want to go this way? Would you like to go this way?
Which is more atmospheric? Bedroom through that way, is it? Or
yes, there's very little. These chambers here, again, they're active. There's something virtually in every room.
Really?
Oh yes.
Well, let's go through that way, shall we?
Oh, that's a spooky little place in there. Before we go any further.
Oh.
That one in there.
Shall we go and have a look? You lead on.
Now this is the steward's room.
Yeah.
And in the wall there, there's a small
a squint.
spy hole, a squint, that they would have been looking through to make sure that everything was going well.
Yeah.
But through here.
Oh, and a staircase going up there, of course.
Yes, these mirror staircases are everywhere in my house. There's another one there that leads up into the attic.
Right.
This room now, what a pleasant little room you might think, and it is, it's quite a pretty room.
Yeah.
But again, not without its happenings. And this can be seriously cold in this room, so cold that it's actually like walking into a fridge.
Really?
Here are the stairs that lead up to the attic above.
Can I have a look?
Now, just before we opened,
yes,
our manager then was called Val Williams, and she noticed that in the attic there was a weed growing behind the window inside in the attic. So she thought, right, better get that from there. So she goes up these stairs, and at the top it's a doorway like this, but it doesn't even have a half door, it's just got a bar across it. She goes up, and she's got a straight skirt on and heeled, balances across the floor because it's just an open floor. She'd had to pull the bar back across the door, balances across the floor, pulls up the weed, comes back, and the bar is back in place.
Oh gosh, and she was the only one around?
She was the only one in the house, actually the only one in the house. And a friend of mine in the early days when we were working here was standing here one day talking to some visitors in the costume that we were wearing. And she was pushed from behind. She was pushed forcibly into the room. The visitors saw her, saw her fall. We can't explain it. But
unseen hands.
Unseen hands.
Yeah.
That's really...
Top floor?
Top floor.
Right.
Yes.
Another one up there, another staircase going up there. It's full of little nooks and crannies and alcoves and staircases everywhere.
Magic of Plancaya.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Absolutely. This stair descends, goes down into the kitchen.
Yeah. Here, withdrawing room of, I presume, from the Great Hall.
Yes,
beautifully panelled.
Interest you actually, because on this door is a hex. Look, here's a mark against witchcraft.
Oh, on the door.
Yes, do you see there?
Well, I've never seen that before on any.
In old houses where the latches and the hinges often are made of iron.
Yes.
You find these hex marks, and they're marks against witches. This is the cross of Christ.
Yeah. In other words, on the door to stop anything coming through the door.
That's right. And you could find them in windows as well.
Really? Again, to stop them coming in. Right.
So that's something.
And is there a way up through that way, or?
Oh yes.
Oh right. Through the secret panel.
This is a spooky little corner because a figure's been seen here by our visitors. Quite a few visitors have seen it.
Right, standing there.
This door, when we're working in the day, we're obliged to make sure that the cord is across, the rope is across, so that the visitors don't fall down the stairs. And then this door always needs to be on the latch. Otherwise, if it isn't on the latch, Someone's not going to do it today, is it?
But normally, I'll bet,
yeah, it
opens itself.
It swings open.
They're obviously not in today.
No. And there are times when we're in the room and the door is closed, but the latch still goes as if someone is...
As if someone's actually... Oh, I say. And now where?
There are other things that happen in this room. Be warned, beware. Something in this room is attracted to cameras. And people who've been in taking photographs for our brochures, professional photographers. We've had, on 2 separate instances, we've had photographers who felt something cold behind them. And they've sort of moved out of the way, and it's moved with them, and they've moved further, and they've moved further and further, and the one took off and came back to over the other side to us. The other one stuck his ground.
Good grief.
And he said he felt as if this sort of took over half his body and was virtually trying to see what he was doing. And when eventually he did come over there, he was absolutely frozen. One side of him was soaking wet, and he was so cold we couldn't believe it.
Are you feeling all right, Steve? Right, onwards and upwards. Into the bedroom.
Yes.
Now, of course, things were picked up here when we were actually on Most Haunted, and Derek actually picked up someone in the bed, actually dying in the bed. And of course, something that was pointed out to me recently, that the reason the beds were so small in those days is because gentry, especially, who could afford beds like that, slept partly sitting up, because the angel of death passing by at night,
That's right.
if they saw them lying out completely flat, the angel of death would think they were already dead and take them.
You'd breathe your last.
And that's why they used to sleep sitting up in a bed like this one.
Elizabeth I wouldn't go to bed.
That's right. That's correct. She sat on a cushion or a chair. That's right, yeah.
And then when she did go to bed and she died, everyone thought, well, there's the proof of the pudding there.
Absolutely right.
But this room is, again, not without its incidents, particularly around this area.
Yeah.
This wardrobe, and we've got a stool against it now, but these wardrobe doors on occasion have just been flung wide open, as if there's someone in there playing some sort of a prank.
I've heard quite a few stories to do with wardrobes for some strange reason, and the doors flying open.
And just...
Yeah.
You honestly would think there's someone in there. And it's happened to Graham. He's here somewhere. Graham,
really?
Yes. And it's happened to Graham when he was walking through.
Crikey.
He thought there was someone in the wardrobe as well.
And what's happened to you?
Well, I was actually coming down off these steps.
Yeah. This of course is a modern fire escape that's been put in. Yeah.
Yes. And I was actually coming down off the steps when the strings of my apron, it was tugged.
Yeah.
Now initially I thought I must have caught it onto something and snagged
it. Yeah.
But there is nothing there to snag it on, and to be honest, the apron strings are too short to catch on anything. And I'm quite convinced it was pulled.
Someone was actually pulling on your apron strings.
Yanked the string.
Crikey.
And the apron...
Were you alone at the time? Or?
I was, yes. And it was about this time in the afternoon. It was a summer's day.
Did it bother you?
No, it didn't.
No.
But other people who've been in this room have had strange things happen. Girls with long hair have had their hair pulled. People with anoraks, parkas on.
Yep. The strings
have been pulled. Shoelaces have been.
Obviously, a fetish for
anything.
Strings.
It's like a little child who is.
And it could be a little child, of course, couldn't it?
Well, this is a sort of a thing that a child would do, is to hide, and then to sort of jump out and say, "Boo, here I am." But it isn't a frightening thing at all.
No, it's not a frightening house, though, is it?
Not in the main. It can be.
Oh yes. Oh yes. It was a bit spooky when I was here at 3 o'clock in the morning, with no lights on.
So we go straight through this room.
Yeah. Oh, I've forgotten this.
Oh, the rocking cradle.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one.
Now, of course, I know for a fact that things happen in here, because that rocking cradle has been seen to actually, on its own, be rocking like that. People have reported seeing that. I'm right, aren't I?
And recently, quite recently, Suzanne was here with a party of visitors from Japan, and they were in this part of the room when all of a sudden it just started on its own. Just started to rock on its own.
Gosh.
Again, sort of trick that a little boy.
Absolutely. And your ghostly goings on through here? So this is the most haunted room?
This is reputed to be the most haunted room in the house.
Yeah.
But I personally, I usually feel quite happy in
Oh,
here.
yeah,
Quite,
yeah.
I don't feel anything
No.
here. But apparently there's another lady here who is there, and she's quite young. She's got her hair up on top of her head. Is dressed properly. And another thing that happened to both myself and a colleague called Carol Vaughan Williams, who used to work in Llancair in the early days when we opened first of all. A February night, and it was late in the night. We'd been downstairs having a bit of a bank with the staff, and it was 10 o'clock, and there was a nitress on this bed that was a 17th century nitress that I had decided to wash.
Yep.
But I'd forgotten it in the day when I was working here, so in the night I decided to come back up for it.
Yes.
So we left the safety of the downstairs where the lights were on, no lights on at all up here, no lights in the car park, no lights on the road, because as I say, it was the early days. And by the time we got onto this corridor, it was so dark that virtually we were feeling our way along the walls. So we didn't come in this way, we came in this way.
Through the curtain?
Yeah, there wasn't a curtain there then.
Oh, I see.
So we came in through this doorway, one hanging onto the other by now.
Yes.
Reached the bed, and as I put down my hand to pick up the nitrous, we were just about to see the outline of the bed. In the darkness, something passed the both of us. We heard the rustle of a taffeta skirt, and there was this coldness and this feeling. We could feel a sort of, not a breeze, but I don't know what you can call it. It was frightening, that was, because we were in the dark and not expecting it.
You didn't see anything, but you heard it.
But felt it.
And felt it.
I came back the next day to try to reconstruct, because I couldn't believe it.
No, it didn't happen again.
I couldn't reconstruct. I couldn't reconstruct the noise. I couldn't reconstruct any part of it.
So it was a real ghost.
Well, we are convinced, Carol and I. I mean, Carol doesn't work here anymore. But we know what we heard that night.
Exactly.
And other times since, people have
reported.
heard this skirt, rustle of this skirt in the room, you know.
Well, we've reached the top floor. We've reached the end of the journey. And thank you ever so much for your stories. That has been amazing. And really and truly, it seems to be a very haunted place.
This is an exceptional house.
You're right, yeah.
Definitely. Ghosts and spirits everywhere. But it's a very friendly house, a welcoming house.
That's lovely. Enid, thanks very much indeed. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Now, we're in Tenby, at the seaside. Most magnificent place. I haven't been here since 1975. Strangely enough, the year that Marion Davies also came to Tenby.
That's right.
And you're here to tell me some ghostly stories because you do ghost walks.
Indeed.
So, anything juicy for us? Anything interesting?
Well, I think probably one of the most common stories, and I find it recurs time and time again, is the story of the corpse candle, which is basically an omen of death. And I mean, there are all sorts of omens of death around Wales. There was the Tolaeth, which was the voice of death, or the knocking sound.
Yes.
The Haraeth, which was a moaning, groaning banshee. The Deryn, of course, was the bird of death, and it could really be any bird, really. But the Canwyll Corff, the corpse candle, I think has been seen so many times around here. And one particular story relates to a school teacher who apparently was in lodgings just outside Tenby. And one night she awoke, saw the corpse candle in her room, screamed, brought the whole household running to her aid. And by that time it had disappeared. However, some 6 weeks later, her landlady, who was a strong young woman who was in perfect health originally, she died. And this young woman, who was actually away at the time, was recalled to the farmhouse for the funeral and was taken to pay her respects in what was previously her room, and laid out in exactly the spot that she had seen that corpse candle, the omen of death.
Oh my goodness. Oh, I say.
Yeah, so that's a very typical story, and there have been so many corpse candle experiences. Also the Fetch funeral, which again is an omen of death, and this is where you're going to see perhaps some kind of funeral procession.
Yeah, a ghostly one.
A ghostly funeral procession that would herald a real procession.
I see. So the ghostly one would be seen, and then days later or something like that, someone would die, and the actual funeral would then be reenacted, for want of a better word, but in real life.
Yeah, just on the outskirts of Tenby, but sort of between, well, in fact, just outside the village of Penally, there was a very famous one. In 1861, apparently, the vicar of Penally, his serving man, was courting the maid at a local farm, Holloway Farm, and on his way back, very late one evening, he actually witnessed a funeral, a ghostly funeral procession. It was coming towards him closer and closer, and suddenly he realised these were people that he actually knew. He could recognise faces, but could make them out amongst the crowd. He realised he was now suddenly directly in their line, and so he pressed against the hedge to try and keep out of their way, but despite that he was apparently kicked and scratched and beaten. And the following morning, when the vicar saw him, he was absolutely staggered. He wanted to know what had happened to him, and so he explained he'd seen this funeral procession, that they'd come towards him. He recognised people, he listed the people, and then he said, to his utter amazement, as they got to the end of to a bend in the road further down, suddenly the procession had gone up through the hedge and taken the direct route down to the churchyard. Now, the man didn't believe him. The vicar just didn't believe him, accused him of drinking, fighting, and punished him. But some weeks later, the tenant of the farm, Holloway Farm, died, and the vicar was called to give comfort to the family. And whilst he was there, he was given a list of funeral arrangements and so on, and was utterly amazed to see that the list comprised exactly of all the
same people
this man had related to him previously. The night before the funeral, apparently there was a snowfall, a terrible frost, and so the following day of the funeral, the procession made their way through the lanes, and suddenly they came to the bend in the road, and there the route was obliterated by a bank of snow that had gathered there, so they couldn't really see which way to go, and they took the route up through the hedge and across the field in the direct manner that this man had told
seen
his master. And the vicar of Penally said there was absolutely no explanation for it. He just couldn't find any. It simply was, one
supernatural
of the best
experience
of a fetch or phantom funeral.
Amazing. That's a good one. Now we've got more stories, of course. Up to Castle Hill next.
Yep.
Okay. Shall we go?
Yep.
You lead on, because I don't know the way. So Marion, we're actually now on Castle Hill.
Yep.
All that's left basically is that piece of castle up there.
Well, there is a gatehouse further down the hill, and there are little bits of wall, but on the top of the Castle Hill, that's the main bit. Thing, really.
Yeah. Now behind us here is St Catherine's Island.
Yep.
That it looks so much like Alcatraz, you wouldn't believe it. I mean, it's not a prison, is it, up there?
No, it was a fort. It was part of the defences of this area, particularly in view of the fact we had Milford Haven and Pembroke Dock, which were naval dockyards. So this was built in anticipation of an attack that may occur by the French, really, and Napoleon III. It's at the same time as this was being built, things like the Martello Towers and so on around the coast, and other defences.
Now we have, of course, a ghostly story to do with the island and the area around here, of course.
Well, apparently sometime around the mid-16th century, the people of Tenby were really very shocked and surprised one stormy night to see a ghostly vessel travelling across Carmarthen Bay here. Now, it was being tossed and turned in apparently most ferocious ways. It was absolutely appalling weather, and they could see ghostly figures and sort of firelights, they said, on the deck of the boat, but were absolutely terrified by ghostly wailing noises and so on. So rushed back to their houses and waited really.
Lock the doors.
Yes, lock the doors, exactly. But the following morning they came back down to the castle beach here, expecting to see masses of wreckage up and down, but there was nothing to be seen except the body of a young man who was just lying here on the beach. Now, apparently he was dressed in strange clothing. It seemed that he was, I think he looked dead, but in fact he was asleep and was actually woken by the birds overhead, they say. Of course the people of Tenby rushed down to offer him food and water, invited him back to their houses, but he refused to come into Tenby and instead preferred to go and live here on St Catherine's Island. Now, apparently he was there for quite some long time and was a very familiar figure that would be seen around about the rocks there. prior to the fort being up on the island there was apparently a little chapel to St Catherine, and I can't exactly tell you how old it is, or it might have been. It was demolished to make way for the fort, but perhaps he did take shelter there, I wouldn't really like to say. But a shepherd that worked his flocks around the cliffs here took pity on the man, and because winter was approaching, decided he'd go over and invite him to come back and stay with his family. So went over to the island, again took food and water, and he found the man sitting on a rock at the back of the island looking out to sea. Now the man again refused to come into Tenby, he just wouldn't come in, but it was at that time he began to tell his tale. Now he said he was a pirate chief, and he said that during his career he'd committed terrible atrocities, him and his crew, that all the crew had been lost in a storm, and that his boat had been manned by ghosts and spirits. He said that he had killed the one that loved him best in a violent fit of temper. He'd killed her. But he said since that time, sea maidens had come to him at night here on the island and told him that she had forgiven him and that she was now at rest. Now, during the course of relating this story, suddenly he leapt up, pointed to some waves that were rolling towards the island, and said to this shepherd, look, there she is, upon the billow's crest, upon the wave. And with that, he threw himself into the water here, just below the island, and was drowned. Now, as I say, today's a lovely day here. The sea is calm.
Very tranquil.
I can tell you, in the winter it is wild. Horrendous waves, really very dangerous, just around the island, and there was nothing that could be done.
No
to
chance
save him.
to get him out.
No, and since then, no sightings have been made of him, but the people of Tenby, it said, those that became acquainted then with his story through the shepherd, hoped that he'd found his rest at last, that he was at peace with himself after all the terrible crimes he'd committed. Now, I will tell you that in fact this area was very much troubled by the activities of the Barbary corsairs, who were pirates who came from North Africa, and it may well be the case that this was actually a Barbary corsair that was down on his luck in a most desperate way.
Wow. Hence the fact they mentioned strange clothes, of course.
Yes, I think that's right.
That is fantastic. Now tell me, we're here talking to you because you actually do the Tenby ghost walks.
That's right.
All year round, or?
Well, they are available all year round, but it's in the summer really that I'm on a regular timetable of 6 days a week.
Oh my gosh.
And, I leave up in town by the Lifeboat Tavern, leave at 8 o'clock, 6 nights of the week, and the walk takes an hour and a half.
So anybody wants to come on a ghostly tour of Tenby, come and see you.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
To see them.
That is wonderful. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thanks.